I still remember the weight of that envelope in my hands. The lawyer's office smelled like old leather and furniture polish, the kind of place where serious decisions get made behind closed doors. My siblings, Michael and Jessica, sat across from me, their faces carefully neutral as Mr. Henderson adjusted his reading glasses and cleared his throat. The reading of Grandpa Henry's will should have been a formality. We all knew he was wealthy. The man had built his construction company from nothing, turned it into an empire that stretched across 3 states. He drove the same truck for 20 years, wore flannel shirts until they fell apart, and never once mentioned how much money he actually had. That was Grandpa. Humble. Hardworking. The kind of man who believed actions spoke louder than bank accounts. Mr. Henderson's voice droned on, legal terminology washing over me like waves I couldn't quite grasp. Then I heard Michael's name. Michael. $2.5 million. My brother's jaw dropped. Jessica grabbed his arm, her perfectly manicured nails digging into his sleeve. Mr. Henderson continued without missing a beat. Jessica. $2.5 million. My sister actually gasped. I watched her eyes fill with tears, watched her press her hand to her chest like her heart might burst right through her designer blouse. I sat there, waiting for my name, doing the math in my head. If they each got $2.5 million, that meant I'd get the same, right? We'd always been equal in Grandpa's eyes. Or so I thought. Mr. Henderson looked directly at me, and something in his expression made my stomach drop. Mr. Henderson. And to my granddaughter Emma, I leave a round-trip plane ticket to Oslo, Norway, along with the key to safety deposit box number 347 at Bergen International Bank. The silence in that room could have suffocated us all. I stared at him, certain I'd misheard. A plane ticket? A safety deposit box in Norway? That was it? Jessica. I'm sorry, what? Her voice dripped with false sympathy, the kind she'd perfected over years of being the favorite child, the successful one, the one with the corner office and the perfect husband and the house in the suburbs with the white picket fence. Michael, that can't be right. There must be some mistake. But Mr. Henderson just shook his head, sliding an envelope across the polished mahogany table. My name was written on it in Grandpa's shaky handwriting, the letters slanting the way they had after his stroke 3 years ago. Mr. Henderson, your grandfather was very specific about his wishes. He left instructions that this envelope was to be given to Emma immediately following the reading of the will. He also left this for you. He handed me a smaller envelope, sealed with red wax that had Grandpa's ring pressed into it, the ring he'd worn every single day since Grandma died. I turned the envelope over in my hands, my fingers trembling. The car ride home was silent. Michael offered to drive me, but I could see the pity in his eyes, mixed with relief that he wasn't the one who'd been singled out. Jessica didn't even pretend to care. She was already on her phone, probably texting her husband about the windfall. I sat in my tiny apartment that night, surrounded by thrift store furniture and overdue bills, and stared at those 2 envelopes. The plane ticket was dated for 3 days from now. First class. But what good was a first-class ticket when you were being sent away from everything you knew? When your grandfather had apparently decided you were worth less than your siblings? The anger came in waves. Hot, bitter waves that made my chest tight and my eyes burn. I'd been the one who visited Grandpa every week. Me. Not Michael with his fancy car and his investment portfolio. Not Jessica with her charity galas and her social climbing. I was the one who sat with him on Sunday afternoons, listening to his stories about building that first house with his bare hands, about meeting Grandma at a church social, about the early days when they had nothing but each other and dreams. I'd been the one who held his hand in the hospital after his stroke, the one who helped him with physical therapy, who read to him when his eyes got too tired, who made sure he took his medications. And this was how he repaid me? With a plane ticket and a mystery safety deposit box? I opened the smaller envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a single piece of paper, folded once. Grandpa's handwriting covered both sides, cramped and difficult to read, but unmistakably his. Dearest Emma, he'd written, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and you're probably angry. You're probably hurt. You might even hate me right now, and I understand that. But I need you to trust me one more time, sweetheart. I need you to get on that plane. Your brother and sister got what they needed. Money, security. They'll invest it wisely, I'm sure. They'll buy bigger houses and newer cars and never have to worry about making ends meet again. That's what they wanted from life, and I was happy to give it to them. But you, Emma, you're different. You always have been. You've got your grandmother's spirit, her fire, her hunger for something more than a comfortable life. And that's why I'm sending you to Norway. There's something waiting for you there. Something I should have told you about years ago. But I was a coward. Your grandmother made me promise to keep it secret until the time was right, and I honored that promise even though it killed me every time I looked at you and saw her in your eyes. Go to Oslo. Find the safety deposit box. Inside, you'll find letters from your grandmother and directions to a place that's been waiting for you your whole life. Trust me, sweetheart, this isn't a punishment. It's a gift. The greatest gift I could possibly give you. I love you more than you'll ever know. Be brave, Grandpa. I read that letter 15 times that night. Each time I got angrier. A gift? He called this a gift? My siblings got millions of dollars and I got cryptic instructions and a plane ticket to a country I'd never even thought about visiting. But beneath the anger, something else stirred. Curiosity, maybe. Or desperation. Because what did I have to lose? My job at the coffee shop barely paid rent. My degree in art history had turned out to be worth about as much as the paper it was printed on. My last relationship had imploded 6 months ago when Derek decided he wanted someone with better prospects and fewer student loans. I was 28 years old and I had nothing. No career, no relationship, no direction. Just an empty apartment and a growing sense that life was passing me by while I stood still, too afraid to move, too paralyzed by the fear of making the wrong choice to make any choice at all. The next morning, I called my boss and quit. She didn't even seem surprised. Then I called Jessica. Jessica, you're actually going? The judgment in her voice was crystal clear. Emma, I don't have much choice, do I? Jessica, you always have a choice, Emma. You could stay here, use whatever's in that safety deposit box to start over. Grandpa probably left you some money, maybe not as much as Michael and me, but something. Emma, and if I don't go, if I just ignore his instructions? Jessica, then you'd finally be showing some sense. I hung up on her. Michael was more sympathetic, but not by much. Michael, look, Em, I get it. This is weird. But maybe Grandpa had his reasons. He always did. Emma, yeah, well, his reasons better be good. Michael, do you want me to come with you? I could probably clear my schedule. The offer was genuine. I knew that. Michael had always been the protective older brother, even when we were kids. But this felt like something I needed to do alone. Emma, thanks, but no. I think this is something I have to figure out on my own. The days before the flight passed in a blur. I packed a single suitcase, gave my landlord notice, and put everything I owned into storage. If this went badly, I'd come back to nothing. But somehow, that thought didn't scare me as much as it should have. The flight attendant smiled as I settled into my seat, the leather soft beneath me, so different from the cramped economy seats I was used to. I'd never flown first class before, never even considered it, but Grandpa had, one last time, given me a taste of luxury. The woman sitting next to me was probably in her 60s, elegant in the way European women always seem to be. Silver hair cut in a sharp bob, minimal makeup, expensive clothes that looked effortless. Margaret. First time to Oslo, her accent was British, crisp and cultured. Emma. Is it that obvious? Margaret. You have the look of someone embarking on an adventure, or running from something. Sometimes they're the same thing. I laughed, surprising myself. Emma. Maybe both. Margaret. The best journeys usually are. We talked for hours. She told me about her life in London, about her work as an art curator, about her own journey of self-discovery that had taken her across 3 continents and through 2 marriages. I told her about Grandpa, about the will, about the mystery waiting for me in Norway. Margaret, your grandfather sounds like a wise man. Sometimes the greatest gifts don't look like gifts at first. Emma, that's what he said in his letter. Margaret, and do you believe him? I thought about that as the plane cut through clouds over the Atlantic. Emma, I don't know. I want to. Margaret, then that's enough to start with. Oslo in early October was cold and gray, the kind of damp that seeped into your bones. I stood outside the airport, watching my breath cloud in the air, and wondered what the hell I was doing here. The taxi driver who picked me up barely spoke English, but he understood the name of the bank well enough. I checked into a modest hotel near the city center, exhaustion hitting me like a wave as soon as I closed the door. The room was clean and simple, all blonde wood and white linens. Very Scandinavian. Very different from anything I'd known. I lay on the bed fully clothed and stared at the ceiling, jet lag mixing with emotional exhaustion. My phone buzzed with texts from Jessica, questions I didn't want to answer, judgments disguised as concern. I turned it off and slept for 14 hours straight. The next morning, I forced myself to shower and dress. My reflection in the mirror looked hollow, uncertain. dark circles under my eyes, hair that needed washing. I looked like someone who'd made a terrible mistake and was only now beginning to realize it. The hotel breakfast was elaborate. Cheeses and meats and breads I couldn't name. Fish for breakfast, which seemed strange. Other guests chatted in languages I didn't understand. I felt profoundly alone in a way I'd never experienced before. Not just physically alone, but existentially. Cut off from everything familiar, floating in a life that felt increasingly surreal. I walked the streets of Oslo for hours before heading to the bank. I needed to delay, needed to put off whatever truth waited in that safety deposit box. The city was beautiful in a stark, Nordic way. Clean streets, modern architecture mixed with old stone buildings, people on bicycles despite the cold. Everyone looked purposeful, like they knew exactly where they were going and why. I felt like a ghost floating through their world. A street musician played violin near the harbor, the melody haunting and lonely. I stood listening for 20 minutes, tears streaming down my face, not caring who saw. When he finished, I put all the Norwegian currency I had in his case. He nodded at me, understanding somehow that I needed that music more than I needed money. The harbor stretched before me, boats bobbing gently in the gray water. Seagulls cried overhead. I thought about Grandpa, about his last months when he knew he was dying, about the careful planning that had gone into this, the plane ticket, the timing, the secret he'd kept for decades. What had he hoped I'd find here? What had he hoped I'd become? Bergen International Bank was all glass and steel, intimidating in its modern elegance. I walked through the revolving doors, feeling distinctly out of place in my jeans and secondhand jacket. The woman at the desk looked like she'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. Bank employee. How may I help you? Her English was perfect, barely a hint of an accent. Emma, I need to access a safety deposit box. Number 347. I handed her the key, my palms sweaty around the metal. She examined it, then looked at me with new interest. Bank employee. Of course. May I see your identification? The process took 20 minutes. Forms to sign, identification to verify, signatures to compare. Finally, she led me down a series of corridors to a room lined with metal boxes. She used her key along with mine, and the box slid out with a whisper of metal on metal. Bank employee. Take all the time you need. Press the button when you're finished. Then I was alone with whatever Grandpa had left me. The box was heavier than I expected. I set it on the small table and lifted the lid with trembling hands. Inside were letters, dozens of them, tied with faded ribbon. Beneath them, a leather-bound journal, worn smooth with age, and at the bottom, a photograph I'd never seen before. It was Grandma, young and laughing, standing in front of a small house with colorful trim. Mountains rose behind her, snow-capped and majestic. She looked so happy, so alive, so different from the quiet woman I'd known growing up. Next to her stood a man I didn't recognize, older, with kind eyes and a warm smile. I picked up the first letter. It was addressed to Grandpa, dated nearly 50 years ago. My grandmother's handwriting flowed across the page, elegant and sure. My dearest Henry, she'd written. I've made my decision, and I hope you can forgive me. I'm coming home to America, home to you, because I love you more than I love this place, more than I love my own dreams. But please understand that leaving here is like cutting off a part of my soul. This little town in the mountains has become home in a way I never expected. The art, the community, the freedom to create without judgment. I never knew such places existed. But I choose you. I choose us. I choose the life we'll build together in Nebraska, even though it means giving up everything I've found here. Take care of my heart, Henry. It's breaking even as I write this. Forever yours, Catherine. I read letter after letter, piecing together a story I'd never known. Grandma had spent 2 years in Norway before she met Grandpa. She'd come here to study art, to escape the conservative small town where she'd grown up, to find herself in a place where women could be artists and dreamers, and something more than someone's wife. She'd lived in a tiny village in the mountains, painted landscapes and portraits, taught art to local children. She'd been happy, free, herself in a way she'd never been allowed to be back home. Then she'd met Grandpa on a trip back to the States. He'd swept her off her feet, promised her a good life, and she'd made the choice to stay, to give up her dreams for love. The journal was more personal, more raw, page after page of her thoughts, her regrets, her compromises. She'd loved Grandpa, that much was clear, but she'd also mourned the life she'd given up, the art she'd stopped creating, the woman she'd buried beneath decades of being a good wife, a good mother, a good grandmother. There are parts of myself I'll never get back, she'd written in an entry dated 5 years before she died. I look at my granddaughter Emma and see the same fire in her eyes that burned in me. She has my restlessness, my hunger for something more. I pray she's braver than I was. I pray she doesn't sacrifice herself the way I did. Tears streamed down my face as I read. All those Sunday afternoons with Grandma, sitting in her kitchen while she taught me to bake, listening to her gentle advice about life and love and being practical. I'd thought I knew her. But this woman in the letters, this passionate artist who'd given up everything, she was a stranger. At the bottom of the journal was an envelope addressed to me. I opened it with shaking hands. "My darling Emma," she'd written. "If you're reading this, it means Henry kept his promise. It means you found your way to Norway, to this bank, to my letters. I don't know how old you are now, what choices you've made, what life you've built, but I know you, sweetheart. I know the restless heart that beats in your chest because it beats the same as mine once did. I made my choice 50 years ago. I chose love over art, security over passion, a comfortable life over an authentic one. I don't regret marrying your grandfather. He was a good man and we had a good life together. But I do regret losing myself along the way. I regret the paintings I never painted, the dreams I never chased, the woman I never became. Don't make my mistakes, Emma. Don't sacrifice yourself on the altar of other people's expectations. Don't choose safety over authenticity. Don't look back at the end of your life and wonder who you could have been if you'd only been brave enough to try. In this envelope, you'll find the deed to my house in Norway. The little house in the mountains where I spent the 2 happiest years of my life. I never sold it. I couldn't bear to let it go completely. I've been paying taxes on it all these years, keeping it maintained through a local property manager. It's yours now. My gift to you. A place where you can discover who you're meant to be. Go there. Live there for a while. Create, explore, make mistakes. Fall in love with yourself before you fall in love with anyone else. And when you're ready, when you've found your own truth, come home knowing you didn't abandon your dreams the way I did. You have my blessing, sweetheart. You have my love. And you have my greatest hope that you'll be braver than I ever was. All my love, Grandma Catherine." I sat in that sterile bank room and sobbed. For Grandma, for the life she'd given up, for all the years we could have really known each other if only she'd told me the truth, but also for myself, for the gift she'd given me, for the courage she was asking me to find. The property manager's name was Lars Eriksson. His office was in a town called Ålesund, about 6 hours north of Oslo. I called him from my hotel room that night, my hands still shaking. "Lars. Emma? Catherine's granddaughter?" His English was accented but clear. "Emma. Yes. I just found out about the house. I'd like to see it. Lars. Of course. I've been expecting your call, actually. Your grandfather contacted me several months ago, told me to prepare the house. Said someone special would be coming to claim it soon. I'm glad it's you. Emma. You knew my grandmother? Lars. I was just a boy when she lived here, but yes, I remember her. Everyone in the village does. She taught me to draw. Terrible at it I was, but she never made me feel foolish. She was very kind. Emma. Can I see the house tomorrow? Lars. Tomorrow might be difficult. The weather's turning bad and the roads to the village can be treacherous. But I can pick you up the day after? Drive you there myself? 2 days later, I sat in Lars's truck as we wound through mountain roads that seemed to climb straight up into the clouds. The landscape was breathtaking. Steep valleys, cascading waterfalls, fjords that gleamed like mirrors in the occasional breaks of sunlight. This was the place that had captured Grandma's heart. I could see why. Lars. You look like her, you know. Same eyes. Same way of looking at things like you're trying to memorize them. Emma. Did you keep in touch with her after she left? Lars. No, she made a clean break. But she wrote to my mother sometimes. Sent money to maintain the house. Always said she'd come back someday, but she never did. Emma. She couldn't. She chose a different life. Lars. Sometimes the hardest choices are the ones between two good things. The village appeared suddenly around a bend, a cluster of colorful houses nestled in a valley between mountains. It looked like something from a fairy tale. Reds and blues and yellows bright against the gray sky. Smoke curled from chimneys. A small church with a steeple stood at the center. Lars. Here we are. Fjellby. Mountain village. Population about 200, give or take. Grandma's house sat at the edge of the village, backed up against the forest. It was smaller than I'd imagined, painted a cheerful yellow with white trim around the windows. A stone path led to the front door. Flower boxes sat empty beneath the windows, waiting for spring. Lars handed me the key. Lars, I'll wait in the truck. Take your time. The door swung open with a creak. Inside, dust motes danced in the light filtering through lace curtains. The furniture was simple, worn but sturdy. A wood stove sat in one corner. Built-in shelves lined one wall, empty now except for a few books and shelves. But it was the studio that took my breath away. The entire back wall was windows, floor to ceiling, overlooking the valley. An easel stood in the center of the room, draped with a sheet. Paints lined shelves, brushes in jars, canvases stacked against the walls. Everything was old but preserved, waiting, always waiting. I pulled the sheet off the easel. Beneath it was a painting, unfinished, a self-portrait. Grandma as I'd never seen her, young and fierce and free. Her hair loose around her shoulders, paint smudged on her cheek, eyes looking directly at the viewer with an intensity that made my chest tight. She'd been painting herself into existence here, creating the woman she wanted to be, stroke by stroke. And then she'd left it all behind. Emma, I won't waste this, I promise. I didn't realize I'd spoken aloud until Lars appeared in the doorway. Lars, the village will be happy to have someone in this house again. It's been too long empty. Emma, I don't know how long I can stay. I don't have much money. Lars, there's a school in the next village over. They've been looking for an English teacher. Part-time, but it pays. And the cost of living here is not so high. If you want to stay, you can make it work. Emma, you make it sound simple. Lars, sometimes the best things are. That night, I slept in Grandma's house for the first time. The bed was narrow but comfortable. The blankets smelled like cedar and thyme. I lay awake listening to the wind in the trees, the distant rush of a waterfall, sounds so different from the city noise I was used to. My phone buzzed. A text from Jessica. Have you figured out what Grandpa left you yet? Michael and I are curious. I typed out a response and deleted it 3 times. Finally, I just turned off the phone. Whatever I was doing here, whatever I was discovering, it wasn't for them. Not yet. Maybe not ever. The next morning, I woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the smell of wood smoke. Someone had left a basket on the porch. Fresh bread, eggs, a jar of jam. No note. Lars, that'll be Solveig. She lives next door. Bit nosy but kind-hearted. The whole village knows you're here by now. Small places like this, news travels fast. I met Solveig later that day. She appeared at my door with coffee and questions, a woman in her 70s with bright eyes and no sense of personal boundaries. Solveig, so you're Catherine's girl. About time. We wondered when someone would come. Sit. Tell me everything. Emma, there's not much to tell. I didn't even know about this place until a few days ago. Solveig, Catherine never told you? That's sad. She loved it here, you know. Painted like a woman possessed. Taught half the children in the village to see beauty in everyday things. Then one day she was gone. Broke our hearts. Emma, she had to go back to America. She met someone. Solveig, love? Yes. Always love. But you know what I think? I think she was afraid. Afraid of being too happy here. Afraid of choosing herself over what everyone else expected. The words hit too close to home. Emma, maybe. Solveig, don't make the same mistake. You've got her talent. I can see it in your hands. Artists have different hands. They see things, want to grab them, hold them, make them permanent. Stay, paint, be happy. Life's too short for anything else. Those first days in the village were harder than I'd expected. The isolation hit me in waves. I'd wake in the middle of the night, disoriented, unsure where I was. The silence was overwhelming. No traffic sounds, no sirens, no neighbors arguing through thin walls. Just wind and water and the occasional animal cry. I tried to paint that first week and couldn't. I'd stand in front of the easel for hours, brush in hand, and nothing would come. The blank canvas mocked me. All those years of art school, all those dreams of being an artist, and I couldn't produce a single brushstroke that felt authentic. The fear came then. Real, paralyzing fear. What if I'd made a terrible mistake? What if Grandpa had been wrong about me? What if I had no talent, no purpose, nothing to offer? What if I'd given up my entire life for nothing? I called Michael one night, sobbing so hard I could barely speak. Michael, what's wrong? Are you okay? Emma, I can't do this. I can't paint. I can't create anything. I'm sitting in this beautiful studio with everything I could possibly need and I'm frozen. What if Grandpa was wrong? What if there's nothing here for me? Michael, you've been there less than a week. Give yourself time. Emma. Time for what? To fail more completely? I should come home. This was stupid. I should have taken whatever money was in that box and stayed in America. Michael, do you remember what you told me when I wanted to quit business school? You said the hardest part of any journey is the middle, when you've left where you started but haven't arrived where you're going yet. You said that's when most people turn back, right before they would have succeeded. Emma, that was different. Michael, was it? Or are you just scared because you're actually doing something that matters to you? Something where failure would hurt because you actually care? His words stopped me cold. He was right. I'd spent years playing it safe, never risking anything real, never putting my true self on the line. And now, when I actually had the chance to create something meaningful, I was paralyzed by fear. Emma, I don't know how to do this. How to be this person. Michael, nobody knows how to be themselves at first. You have to practice. You have to try and fail and try again. That's what bravery looks like. Not the absence of fear, but doing it anyway. After that call, something shifted. I stopped trying to paint masterpieces. Instead, I started small, sketches of the view from my window, quick studies of light and shadow, simple exercises to get my hands moving again, to remember what it felt like to create without judgment. The village school contacted me about the teaching position. The principal, a woman named Ingrid, came to the house to interview me. Ingrid, your grandfather contacted us several months ago, said his granddaughter might be coming, might need work. He was very specific about the timing. He knew, didn't he, that he was dying? Emma, yes, he planned all of this. Ingrid, he must have loved you very much, to give you this chance. Emma, or he was disappointed in me, wanted me out of the way. Ingrid, is that really what you believe? I thought about it, really thought about it. Emma, no. I think he saw something in me I couldn't see in myself, and I think that terrifies me more than anything. Ingrid, good. Terror means you're paying attention. When can you start? The teaching was awkward at first. 15 teenagers staring at me with varying degrees of interest and skepticism. My Norwegian was non-existent. Their English ranged from excellent to barely functional. But slowly, we found our rhythm. There was a girl named Astrid who reminded me of myself at that age. Quiet, watchful, full of dreams she was too afraid to voice. She'd linger after class, asking questions about America, about art, about whether it was possible to have a life that looked different from what everyone expected. Astrid, my parents want me to study engineering. Be practical. Emma, what do you want? Astrid, to write stories, novels. But that's not realistic, is it? You can't make a living as a writer. Emma, you can't make a living as anything if you're too afraid to try. She looked at me with something like hope in her eyes. Astrid, but what if I fail? What if I'm not good enough? Emma, what if you are? What if you spend your whole life wondering instead of knowing? Which would haunt you more? I was talking to myself as much as to her. Every word I said to those students was a reminder to myself. To be brave. To try. To not let fear win. Over the next few weeks, I settled into a routine I'd never planned. Mornings painting in the studio, trying to remember techniques I'd learned in college and mostly abandoned. Afternoons walking through the village and the mountains beyond, my sketchbook filling with drawings of landscapes and faces and small, beautiful moments. The English teaching job materialized. 3 afternoons a week in the next village, teaching conversational English to teenagers who ranged from eager to sullen. The pay was modest, but enough. With no rent to pay and living expenses minimal, I was making it work. But more than that, I was doing something I'd never done before. I was living. Actually living. Not just existing. Not just going through the motions of a life I'd fallen into rather than chosen. The villagers accepted me with a warmth that surprised me. Invitations to dinner appeared regularly. People stopped to chat when I walked to the store. Children waved from their yards. It was nothing like the anonymous city existence I'd left behind. Christian was the first friend I made. He ran the village's only cafe, a tiny place with 6 tables and the best coffee I'd ever tasted. He was my age, quick to laugh, easier to talk to than anyone I'd met in years. Christian, you're not a typical tourist. Emma, is it that obvious I don't belong? Christian, I meant it as a compliment. Most tourists come for a few days, take pictures, leave. You're different. You're settling in, becoming part of things. Emma, I'm trying. Christian, that's more than most people do. Most people are too afraid to try anything new. We fell into an easy friendship. He taught me Norwegian phrases. I told him about America, about my life before, about Grandma. He listened without judgment, asked questions that made me think. Christian, do you miss it? Your old life? Emma. Sometimes. Mostly I miss the idea of it. The comfort of routine, knowing what each day would bring. Christian. And now? Emma. Now I don't know what tomorrow will bring. It's terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. Christian. That sounds like living to me. The paintings came slowly at first. Awkward attempts, clumsy compositions. I'd forgotten how hard it was to translate what I saw in my head to what appeared on the canvas. But gradually, something shifted. My hands remembered. My eyes learned to see again. And the paintings got better. I painted the valley in all its moods. The mountains wreathed in morning fog. The village under snow when the first storm came. Solveig's face, weathered and beautiful. Children playing in the street. Christian laughing behind his cafe counter. Each painting was a small act of courage. Each one said, "This matters, I matter. What I see and feel and create matters." Winter descended hard and fast. The days grew short, the darkness long and deep. Lars had warned me about the dark season, how it affected people, how even long-time residents struggled with it. But I found a strange peace in those long nights. Time to read Grandma's journal cover to cover. Time to paint by lamplight. Time to sit by the wood stove and just be still in a way I'd never allowed myself before. But peace wasn't the only thing I found in the darkness. There was also loneliness. Crushing, suffocating loneliness that came with the long nights and short days. I'd go days sometimes without speaking to anyone beyond Solveig's brief visits or quick exchanges at Christian's cafe. The isolation forced me to confront things I'd been avoiding my entire life. Without the distractions of modern life, without the ability to scroll mindlessly through my phone or binge-watch shows or lose myself in the noise of the city, I had to actually sit with my thoughts, with my fears, with myself. I wrote long letters I never sent. To Derek, my ex, explaining why his rejection had hurt so much because it confirmed everything I'd feared about myself. To my parents, long dead, asking why they'd never encouraged my art, why they'd pushed me toward practical choices that made me miserable. To Jessica, saying all the things I'd never been brave enough to say to her face. One particularly dark afternoon in late December, I had what I can only describe as a breakdown. I'd been painting for hours, growing increasingly frustrated. Everything I created felt derivative, meaningless. I threw my brush at the canvas, watched paint splatter across Grandma's unfinished self-portrait, and then I just crumbled. I sat on the studio floor and cried like I hadn't cried since childhood. Huge, gasping sobs that shook my entire body. I cried for the years I'd wasted, for the dreams I'd abandoned, for the person I'd been too afraid to become, for Grandma and her sacrifices, for Grandpa and his lonely last years, for myself and the terrifying possibility that I might never be good enough. Solveig found me there, still on the floor, hours later. She didn't say anything, just sat down beside me, put her arm around my shoulders, and let me cry until there was nothing left. Solveig, you're learning. This is good. Emma, how is this good? I'm falling apart. Solveig, no, you're breaking open. Different thing. You can't become who you're meant to be until you crack apart who you've been. It hurts, but it's necessary. Emma, what if I can't put myself back together? Solveig, you don't put yourself back together the same way. You build something new, something better, something true. She made tea. We sat in silence as darkness fell, which happened absurdly early. 4 in the afternoon and it was night. She didn't try to fix me or cheer me up. She just sat with me in my pain, and somehow that was exactly what I needed. Solveig, Catherine did this too. Had a breakdown her first winter here. Thought she'd made a terrible mistake coming to Norway. Almost went back to America early. Emma? She did? Solveig. Oh yes, we all do it. Everyone who comes here searching for something. The darkness forces you to face yourself. Most people run from that. She stayed, pushed through, and on the other side, she found herself. Emma. And then she left anyway. Solveig. She did, but she was never sorry she came, and she made sure you'd have the same chance. Don't waste it being afraid. That night I picked up my brush again. But this time, I didn't try to paint something beautiful or impressive. I painted my pain, my fear, my loneliness, ugly, raw, honest work. Dark colors and harsh lines and all the emotions I'd been too scared to acknowledge. It was terrible, objectively terrible, but it was true, and somehow, that mattered more. I kept painting like that through the darkest weeks. Pain and fear and loneliness, Grief for the life I'd left behind and terror about the future I was trying to build. Anger at my family, at Derek, at myself, all of it flowing onto canvas in ways that bypassed my critical mind and went straight to something deeper. Christian saw some of these paintings one evening when he stopped by to check on me. Christian, these are different. Emma, they're awful. Christian, they're honest. That's more important than pretty. Emma, nobody wants to buy honest. They want beautiful landscapes they can hang above their sofas. Christian, is that why you're painting? To sell? The question stopped me. Emma, no, I guess not. I don't know why I'm painting anymore. Christian, maybe that's the point. Maybe you're painting because you have to, because something inside you needs to come out. That's real art, Emma. Not decoration, not pretty pictures, but truth. His words settled into me like seeds. I thought about Grandma's paintings, the ones I'd seen in photographs in her journal. They'd been beautiful, yes, but they'd also been true. She'd painted what she saw, what she felt, without worrying about whether anyone else would understand or approve. And she'd been happy doing it. For those 2 years in Norway, she'd been purely, completely happy. Christmas in the village was magical. Everyone gathered at the church for a service I couldn't understand, but felt anyway. Afterwards, Solveig insisted I come to her house for dinner, along with half the village. We ate and drank and sang songs I didn't know the words to, but hummed along with anyway. Children ran between the adults, laughing and playing. Old people sat in corners, watching with contented smiles. Young couples danced. It felt like something from another time, simpler and more connected than anything I'd experienced in America. Astrid found me in a quiet corner, looking overwhelmed. Astrid, are you okay, Emma? Emma, yeah, just taking it all in. It's different from Christmas back home. Astrid, better or worse? Emma, just different. More connected, maybe. Less about stuff and more about people. Astrid, I brought you something. For Christmas. She handed me a small package wrapped in brown paper. Inside was a notebook, handmade, with thick, creamy pages. Astrid, for your thoughts, or sketches, or whatever you need. You've been helping me find my voice as a writer. I wanted to help you find yours. I hugged her, this shy girl who'd somehow become important to me. Emma, thank you. This is perfect. Astrid, Emma, do you think we ever really become who we're meant to be? Or do we just keep trying and failing and trying again? Emma, I think becoming is the point, not arriving. The trying and failing and trying again, that's the real work. Christian, you look happy. He'd appeared beside us with 2 glasses of something that smelled strongly of alcohol. Emma, I am. It surprises me. Christian, why should happiness surprise you? Emma, because I've spent so much of my life thinking it was somewhere else, somewhere I wasn't. Christian, and now? Emma, now I think maybe it was waiting here all along, or maybe I had to come here to find it in myself. After Christmas, something shifted in my work. The raw, painful paintings had cracked something open. Now color started seeping back in. Not the artificial brightness I'd tried to force before, but real color. Deep, complex, nuanced. The kind that came from actually seeing, actually feeling, actually being present. I painted the valley in winter, white and gray and blue, but with hints of warmth. The glow of windows against snow. The pink of sunrise over mountains. The way ice caught and refracted light. Each painting was an exploration, a discovery, a small act of courage. And slowly, terrifyingly, I started to believe I might actually be good at this. Not just competent, actually good. On Christmas night, I called Michael. It was the first time I'd spoken to either of my siblings since I'd left. Michael. Jesus, we've been worried. You just disappeared. Emma. I'm sorry. I needed time to figure things out. Michael. Are you okay? Where are you? Emma. I'm in Norway. In Grandma's house. The one she owned but never told anyone about. Michael. Grandma had a house in Norway? I told him everything. The letters, the journal, the village, the life I was building. He listened without interrupting, which was unusual for Michael. Michael. So Grandpa didn't cut you out. He gave you something else entirely. Emma. Yeah. He gave me a chance to find myself before I made all the same mistakes Grandma did. Michael. Are you happy? The question surprised me. Emma. Yeah, Michael. I really am. Michael. Then Grandpa was right. You needed something different than what Jessica and I needed. We needed security. You needed possibility. Emma. Does Jessica see it that way? Michael. Jessica's Jessica. She thinks you're crazy. But between you and me, I think she's a little jealous. Emma. Of what? Michael. Of your courage. Of the fact that you actually left. The rest of us just talk about making big changes. You actually did it. Spring came slowly to the mountains, but when it finally arrived, it was glorious. Snow melt swelled the waterfalls to thundering cascades. Flowers bloomed in riotous color. Birds returned, filling the air with song. And I painted it all, feeling something inside me bloom alongside the landscape. The change in my work was undeniable. I'd look at paintings from just a few months ago and barely recognize them. They'd been tight, controlled, afraid. Now my brushstrokes were confident, my color choices bold. I was painting from somewhere deeper than technique or training. I was painting from truth. Solveig noticed first. Solveig, you've found it. Your voice. Emma, have I? Solveig, look at this. Really look. This isn't Catherine's style. This isn't copying what you learned in school. This is yours. Uniquely. Completely yours. She was right. The painting she pointed to, a view of the valley in early morning mist, was unlike anything I'd created before. It captured not just what I'd seen, but what I'd felt. The hope of new beginnings. The soft possibility of spring. The way light transformed everything it touched. Emma, I don't know when it happened. When I stopped trying so hard and just started being. Solveig, that's how all the best things happen. When we get out of our own way. Lars came by with news about a spring festival the village held every year. Lars, local artists show their work. Sell if they're lucky. Solveig mentioned you might be interested. Emma, I don't know if I'm ready. These paintings are so personal. Lars, the personal is what makes art matter. Besides, Catherine showed her work at this festival 50 years ago. Seems fitting her granddaughter would do the same. The thought of putting my work out there, of letting strangers see these pieces of my soul, terrified me. But Christian encouraged it. Christian, what's the worst that can happen? Nobody likes them? So what? You'll still have created them. They'll still be real. Emma, easy for you to say. You're not the one being judged. Christian, I put myself out there every day. Every cup of coffee I serve, every pastry I make. That's me on a plate. Sometimes people love it. Sometimes they don't finish it. You learn to separate your worth from other people's opinions. Emma, how? Christian, practice. And remembering why you're doing it in the first place. You're not painting for them. You're painting for you. The fact that they get to see it is just a bonus. I spent 2 weeks preparing for the festival, selecting pieces, framing them, writing little cards with titles and prices that felt absurdly high until Solveig told me they were too low. Solveig, you're not selling decoration. You're selling your time, your skill, your vision. Don't undervalue it. I raised the prices. My hands shook as I wrote the new numbers. The night before the festival, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about all the ways this could go wrong. People laughing at my work, walking past without a second glance, pitying me for thinking I could be an artist. All my old insecurities came flooding back with a vengeance. At 3 a.m, I almost packed everything away, almost decided not to do it. But then I remembered Michael's words from that desperate phone call months ago. The hardest part is the middle, when you've left where you started, but haven't arrived where you're going yet. I was still in the middle, still becoming, and backing out now would mean I'd never know what was possible. My paintings had evolved. They were better now, more confident, more distinctly mine. Solveig convinced me to show them at the village's spring festival, a small affair, but important to the community. I set up a makeshift gallery in Christian's cafe, my stomach churning with nerves. The morning of the festival, I arrived early to set up. Christian had cleared space along one wall, hung proper gallery lighting he'd borrowed from somewhere. In that light, my paintings looked different. Professional. Real. Christian, they're beautiful, Emma. Really beautiful. Emma, you have to say that. Christian, I don't have to say anything. And I wouldn't lie about art. These are good. You should be proud. Pride wasn't what I felt. Terror, mostly. Vulnerability. Like I'd stripped naked in front of the entire village. The festival started at 10. By 10:15, people were already looking at my work. Really looking. I stood in the corner, trying to be invisible, watching their faces. Some people smiled. Some nodded. Some moved on quickly. Each reaction felt like a verdict on my entire existence. Then an older man stopped in front of my winter series. He stood there for a long time, just looking. Finally, he turned to me. Older man, you painted these? Emma. Yes. Older man. They're remarkable. The way you've captured the quality of light in winter. Most people paint winter as just white and gray, but you found all the colors hiding in it. The blues, the pinks, the unexpected warmth in extreme cold. Emma. Thank you. Older man. I'm an art dealer in Bergen. Would you be interested in showing these in my gallery? I thought I'd misheard him. Emma. Your gallery? Older man. I represent several Norwegian artists, young talents. You'd fit well with what we're doing. Here's my card. Think about it and call me. I stood there holding his card, stunned. Christian appeared at my elbow, grinning. Christian. Did that just happen? Emma. I think so. I'm not sure. Maybe I imagined it. Christian. You didn't imagine it. You're talented, Emma. Other people are finally seeing what I've been seeing for months. The day got stranger from there. A couple from Oslo bought 3 paintings. A local business owner commissioned a piece for his office. A woman from Germany asked if I did commissions. By the end of the day, I'd sold 8 pieces and had a list of people interested in future work. The response shocked me. People bought paintings. Not just villagers being kind, but tourists passing through, second homeowners from Oslo. By the end of the weekend, I'd sold 8 pieces and had commissions for 3 more. Christian, you're a real artist now, making money from your work. Emma, it doesn't feel real. Christian, it's real. You're talented, Emma. More talented than you give yourself credit for. That night, sitting alone in the studio, I finally let myself believe it might be true. I was an artist, not a failed college graduate, not a disappointing granddaughter, not the sister who couldn't measure up. Just Emma, an artist, a person discovering who she really was beneath all the layers of who she'd been told to be. I pulled out my phone and took a picture of the studio with its empty spots where paintings had hung that morning. Proof. I sent it to Michael with a simple message. I did it. I actually did it. He called immediately. Michael. I'm so proud of you. Tell me everything. I told him about the festival, the sales, the gallery owner from Bergen, about the moment when I realized people actually valued my work, about how it felt to be seen, really seen, for the first time in my life. Michael. Grandpa knew. He knew you had this in you. Emma. I wish he could see it. This. What I've become. Michael. He knew, Em. That's why he sent you there. He knew exactly what you'd find. That conversation shifted something between Michael and me. We started talking regularly after that. Real conversations about life and dreams and fears and the people we were becoming. The geographic distance had somehow made us closer than we'd been in years. I wrote Jessica a letter. An actual letter, with paper and pen. The first I'd written since grade school. Dear Jessica, I wrote, I know you think I'm crazy. Maybe I am. But I'm also happy in a way I've never been before. I'm doing work I love. I'm living in a place that feels like home. I'm becoming someone I actually recognize when I look in the mirror. You got money from Grandpa. I got something different. I got permission to be myself. I got a chance to live the life Grandma gave up. And I finally understand that Grandpa didn't love you and Michael more. He just understood what each of us needed. You needed security. I needed possibility. There's no judgment in that. It's just different. I'm not sure when I'll come back to visit. Maybe not for a long time. But I want you to know I'm okay. Better than okay. I'm finding out who I am, and it turns out I kind of like her. Love, Emma, Christian, and I grew closer as spring turned to summer. Nothing dramatic, no grand declarations. Just quiet moments that accumulated into something that felt important. Coffee together every morning, hikes into the mountains, long conversations that stretched into the night. He told me about his own journey to the village. How he'd grown up in Oslo, worked in corporate finance, worn suits and ties, and slowly died inside. How he'd walked away from it all 5 years ago to open a cafe in a place where nobody knew him, where he could just be himself without the weight of expectations. Christian, people thought I was crazy. My family, my friends, everyone. Giving up a good salary for what? To make coffee in the mountains? Emma. But you're happy. Christian. I am. Took me a while to get there. First year was hell. Second year was hard. Third year I started to breathe. Now I can't imagine living any other way. Emma. Do you ever regret it? Christian. Never. Not once. Money can't buy this feeling. Waking up and actually wanting to face the day. Going to sleep satisfied. Being yourself without apology. That's worth more than any salary. We were sitting by the lake, watching the sun set. The sky was on fire with color, oranges and pinks and purples bleeding together. It was one of those perfect moments you want to capture forever, but no, you can't. Emma, thank you. Christian, for what? Emma, for understanding. For not thinking I'm crazy for being here. For seeing me. Christian, it's easy to see you, Emma. You're not hiding anymore. He was right. I'd spent so much of my life hiding my dreams, hiding my fears, hiding who I really was behind the person I thought I should be. But here, in this village, with this man, I didn't have to hide. I could just be. The kiss happened naturally. No dramatic moment, no orchestrated romance. Just two people who'd been moving toward each other all along, finally closing the distance. It was gentle and sweet and terrifying in its simplicity. When we pulled apart, I was crying. Christian, what's wrong? Emma, nothing. Everything. I'm just happy and scared, and I don't know how to be this vulnerable. Christian, you're doing fine. But as spring deepened into summer and our relationship grew more serious, my fear grew too. The fear of commitment, the fear of making this real, the fear that if I claimed this life, this love, I might lose it. Christian, can I ask you something? We were sitting on the hillside above the village, watching the sun set over the fjord. The sky was on fire with color, oranges and pinks and purples bleeding together. Emma, of course. Christian, when are you going back to America? The question caught me off guard. Emma, I don't know. I haven't really thought about it. Christian, you should think about it. Not because I want you to leave, but because you should be choosing to stay. Consciously. Not just drifting here because it's easier than going back. Emma, is that what you think I'm doing? Drifting? Christian, I think you're afraid to commit. To anything. You're living in this suspended space where nothing's permanent, nothing's real. You can leave anytime. Go back to your old life. Pretend this was just a break from reality. His words stung because they were partially true. Emma, maybe I need that right now. That freedom. Christian, or maybe you're using freedom as an excuse not to build anything real. Look, I care about you, Emma. A lot. But I can't be in a relationship with someone who's always got one foot out the door. Someone who's treating this whole life as temporary. Emma, that's not fair. Christian, isn't it? You've been here almost a year. You have a house, a job, friends. Your art is taking off. But you still talk about all of this like it's just an extended vacation. Like you're playing at being an artist, playing at being part of this community, playing at us. Emma, I'm not playing at anything. Christian, then prove it. Make a choice. Choose to be here. Choose this life. Choose me. Or don't. But stop floating in this in-between space. We didn't speak for the rest of the evening. I walked home alone, angry and confused and uncomfortably aware that he'd touched on something I'd been avoiding. Was I really building a life here? Or was I just playing at it, running away from my problems in America by hiding in a Norwegian village where nothing was expected of me? Where I could be whoever I wanted because nobody knew who I'd been? I pulled out Grandma's journal that night and read the entry I'd been avoiding. The problem with running away, she'd written, is that eventually you have to stop running. Eventually you have to stand still and face yourself. And that's the hardest thing of all. I ran to Norway thinking I was running toward freedom. But what I was really running from was the responsibility of choice. Of committing. Of saying this is who I am, and this is what I want, and living with the consequences. In the end, I ran back to safety. Back to Henry. Back to the life everyone expected me to live. And I've never been sure if I made the right choice or the safe one. If there's even a difference. Don't make my mistakes, Emma. Don't confuse freedom with refusal to choose. Real freedom comes from commitment. From saying yes to something so fully that everything else falls away. I read those words over and over. Grandma had run from commitment, and it had haunted her for 50 years. Was I doing the same thing? Using my fear of making the wrong choice as an excuse to make no choice at all? The next morning, I went to Christian's cafe before it opened. He was setting up chairs, and the look on his face when he saw me was guarded. Emma, you were right, about what you said last night. I've been avoiding making any real decisions, keeping everything temporary so I don't have to risk anything. Christian, I shouldn't have pushed. It's your life. Emma, no, you should have, because someone needed to. I came here running from my old life, but I can't keep running. Eventually, I have to decide. Am I staying? Am I building something here? Or is this just a really long vacation? Christian, what do you want? Emma, I want to stay. I want this to be real. But I'm scared. Christian, of what? Emma, of committing, of choosing, of making this my life instead of just a break from life. Because if I do that, if I really plant roots here, then I'm saying this is who I am. This is the life I want. And what if I'm wrong? What if I fail? Christian, what if you succeed? The question hung in the air between us. Christian, Emma, you're already succeeding. You're painting. You're selling your work. You have friends, a community, a home. The only thing holding you back is your fear of claiming it. Emma, what if I claim it and lose it? Christian, what if you don't claim it and never really have it at all? His words settled into me like truth. I'd been so afraid of loss that I'd been refusing to really have anything, keeping everything at arm's length, never fully committing, never fully present, always with one foot out the door. Emma, I want to stay, really stay. I want to apply for permanent residency. I want to build a life here, with you, if you still want that. Christian, I want that. I've wanted that for months. I was just waiting for you to be ready. Emma, I'm ready. I'm terrified, but I'm ready. He kissed me then, and it felt different from before. It felt like sealing a promise. Not just to each other, but to this life, to this choice, to being fully present instead of halfway gone. I spent the next few days thinking hard about what I wanted, really wanted, not what I thought I should want, not what would make my family happy or impressed my old friends, just what would make me happy, what would make me feel like I was living the life I was meant to live. The answer was surprisingly clear once I stopped fighting it. I wanted to stay. I wanted to paint. I wanted to be part of this community. I wanted to see where things with Christian might go. I wanted to live the life Grandma had given up, and I wanted to live it fully, without reservation. I applied for a residency permit. The paperwork was complicated, but Lars helped me navigate it. I registered my art as a business. I took on more students at the school, and I told Christian I was staying. Christian, for how long? Emma, for as long as it feels right. Maybe forever. Maybe not. But I'm not running anymore. I'm choosing this. Actively choosing it. He kissed me then, and it felt like sealing a promise. Not to each other, not yet, but to the possibility of something real. Jessica called in late summer. Her voice was tight with something I couldn't quite identify. Jessica, Michael told me you're staying in Norway. Permanently. Emma, not necessarily permanently. But yes, I'm staying for now. Jessica, why would you do that? You have a life here. Family, responsibilities. Emma, what responsibilities, Jessica? To what life? I had a dead-end job and an empty apartment. That's not a life. That's just existing. Jessica, and what do you have there? Some fantasy about being an artist? That's not realistic, Emma. Emma, I'm making it work. I'm selling paintings. I'm teaching. I'm paying my bills. And I'm happy. Actually happy. When's the last time you could say that? The silence on the other end was deafening. Jessica, that's not fair. Emma, isn't it? You've spent your whole life chasing what you thought you should want. The perfect job, the perfect husband, the perfect house. But are you happy? Or are you just comfortable? Jessica, there's nothing wrong with comfort. Emma, there's nothing wrong with happiness either. She hung up without saying goodbye. Michael texted me later. You really rattled her. She's been different since that call. Quieter. Thinking more. Maybe you said something she needed to hear. As autumn returned, bringing shorter days and the promise of another winter, I realized I'd been in Norway for almost a year. A full cycle of seasons. A complete transformation of self. I stood in the studio one evening, looking at the painting I'd just finished. It was a self-portrait, an echo of the one Grandma had left unfinished. But this one was complete. Me, covered in paint, brush in hand, looking directly at the viewer with confidence and peace. This was who I'd become, who I'd always been beneath the layers of fear and doubt and other people's expectations. An artist. A woman who'd chosen herself. A granddaughter honoring her grandmother's sacrifice by living the life she couldn't. Solveig appeared in the doorway, as she often did, with coffee and opinions. Solveig, you've finished it. Emma, finally. Solveig, Catherine would be proud of you. Not just for the painting, for the life you're building, for being brave enough to choose yourself. Emma, I think about her a lot, about what she gave up. Solveig, her sacrifice made your freedom possible. That's the thing about generations. Each one's struggles make the next one's choices possible. She couldn't choose herself, but she made sure you could. Emma, I hope I'm making her proud. Solveig, oh sweetheart, I'm sure she knows. Wherever she is, she knows. Winter came again, and with it, an email from Michael. Jessica's getting divorced. She's been miserable for years, apparently. Too proud to admit it. Your phone call shook something loose in her. She's in therapy now, figuring out what she actually wants from life instead of what she thinks she should want. Thought you should know. I read the email 3 times, feeling a complicated mixture of sadness and hope. Maybe my choice to leave had rippled out further than I'd imagined. Maybe sometimes the bravest thing you can do is show other people it's possible to choose differently. On the anniversary of Grandpa's death, I hiked up to the waterfall above the village. The ground was frozen, my breath clouding in the air. I carried a letter I'd written to him, pages and pages of everything I'd learned, everything I'd discovered, everything I wanted to thank him for. I read it aloud to the wind and the water and the mountains. Dear Grandpa, I read, I understand now why you sent me here, why you gave Michael and Jessica money but gave me something different. They needed security. I needed permission. Permission to be myself. Permission to choose differently. Permission to live. You gave me Grandma's dream, the one she sacrificed for you. And in doing that, you set me free. Free from expectations. Free from the small life I'd been living. Free to discover who I could become if I was brave enough to try. I'm painting, Grandpa. Real paintings that people want to buy. I'm teaching. I'm part of a community. I'm building a life that feels authentic and mine. And I'm happy. So deeply, completely happy. Thank you for seeing me clearly enough to know what I needed. Thank you for loving me enough to give it to me, even though it looked like favoritism to everyone else. Thank you for keeping Grandma's secret and then giving it to me at exactly the right time. I hope you're together now, wherever you are. I hope she's painting again, free at last. And I hope you both know that your gift didn't just change my life, it saved it. All my love, Emma. I burned the letter and let the ashes scatter on the wind. It felt right, like releasing something I'd been carrying for too long. Christian was waiting at the bottom of the trail, stamping his feet to keep warm. Christian, how do you feel? Emma, grateful, sad, complete, all of it at once. Christian, that's grief and love and letting go. Emma, when did you get so wise? Christian, living in small villages, not much else to do but think. We walked back to the village hand in hand, and for the first time since arriving in Norway, I felt completely at home. Not visiting, not passing through, home. Spring came again, my second in Norway. The village organized an art show, a proper one, in the community center. Local artists and some from nearby towns. They asked me to participate, and I said yes without hesitation. I showed 15 paintings, landscapes, portraits, studies of light and shadow and the way the mountains held the clouds. Each one was a piece of my journey, my transformation, my discovery of self. The opening was crowded. Villagers came to support me. Tourists wandered in. And at the back, standing quietly by my self-portrait, was Michael. I crossed the room in a daze. Emma, what are you doing here? Michael, I wanted to see what you'd built, what you'd become. We hugged, and I was surprised by how good it felt to see him. Michael, these are incredible, Em. Really incredible. Emma, you don't have to say that. Michael, I'm not just saying it. I mean it. You're talented. More than that, you're alive in a way I don't think I've ever seen you before. Emma, I found what I was meant to do, who I was meant to be. Michael, I envy that. I've spent so much of my life doing what I thought I should do, being who I thought I should be. And I look at you and realize I have no idea who I actually am beneath all that. Emma, it's not too late to find out. Michael, maybe. I don't know if I'm brave enough. Emma, you're braver than you think. Coming here proves that. We spent 3 days together. I showed him the village, the mountains, Grandma's house. We hiked and talked and sorted through years of complicated sibling dynamics. And on his last night, sitting in the studio with wine and the sound of rain on the windows, he asked the question I'd been avoiding. Michael, are you ever coming back? To America? Emma, to visit. But I don't think I'll ever live there again. My life is here now. Michael, and you're happy with that? Never seeing family regularly? Missing holidays? Being so far from everything you knew? Emma, I'm happier than I've ever been. And being close to something doesn't mean you're connected to it. I was physically close to you and Jessica for years, but we barely knew each other. Now I'm thousands of miles away, but I feel closer to understanding what family really means. Michael, which is? Emma, people who want you to be happy. who support your choices even when they don't understand them, who love you enough to let you go when you need to fly. Michael. Grandpa understood that. Emma. Yeah, he did. Michael flew home the next morning. As I watched his taxi disappear down the mountain road, I felt settled in a way I never had before. This was my life now. This village, this work, this version of myself, and I was choosing it every single day. Jessica called 2 months later. Her voice was different, softer, less certain. Jessica, I'm sorry for how I reacted when you left, for not understanding what you needed. Emma, it's okay. Jessica, no, it's not. I judged you for taking a risk because I was too afraid to take any risks myself. And you were right. I wasn't happy. I was just comfortable. And comfortable isn't enough. Emma, what are you going to do? Jessica, I don't know yet. The divorce is almost final. I'm selling the house, starting therapy, trying to figure out who I am when I'm not performing for everyone else. Emma, that's brave. Jessica, it doesn't feel brave, it feels terrifying. Emma, that's how you know it's the right thing. The important things always do. Jessica, can I come visit? See what you've built there? Emma, I'd like that. She came in summer. We walked the mountain trails. She met Christian and Solveig and Lars. She saw the studio, the paintings, the life I'd created. And on her last day, standing in front of Grandma's unfinished self-portrait, she cried. Jessica, she gave this all up. For what? For a conventional life? For what everyone expected? Emma, for love. And maybe that was worth it to her. Maybe she had no regrets. Jessica, but you read her journal. She had regrets. Emma, she had complicated feelings. But I think she also loved Grandpa, loved her life, loved us. It's possible to have chosen right and still wonder about the road not taken. Jessica, do you ever wonder about the life you left behind? Emma, sometimes, but not with regret. More like curiosity. Who would I have been if I'd stayed? And mostly I'm grateful I'll never know, because it means I chose this instead. Jessica, I spent my whole life trying to be perfect. The perfect daughter, the perfect wife, the perfect career woman. And it got me nothing but an ulcer and a failed marriage. You chose to be yourself, and look what you got. Emma, happiness, purpose, freedom. Jessica, yeah, that. We sat in silence, two sisters who'd spent so much of their lives in competition finally finding common ground. Jessica, thank you. Emma, for what? Jessica, for showing me it was possible to choose differently, for being brave enough to leave, for proving that there's life beyond what we were told to want. Emma, you would have figured it out eventually. Jessica, maybe. But you showed me it was okay to try. Christian and I moved in together that autumn, not because we had to, but because we wanted to, because it felt like the natural next step in building something real together. He stood in the studio one morning, watching me paint, coffee in hand. Christian, do you ever miss America? Emma, parts of it, certain foods, some friends, but not the life I had there. Christian, no regrets about staying? Emma, none. This is where I'm meant to be. Christian, how do you know? Emma, because I wake up every morning wanting to be here. Because my work matters to me. Because I'm becoming who I always should have been. How do you measure belonging? By happiness? By purpose? By the feeling that you're exactly where you need to be. The years passed. My art evolved. I started taking on apprentices, teaching young artists the way Grandma once taught children in this same village. I showed in galleries in Oslo and Bergen. My work gained recognition beyond the small community where it began. But more than professional success, I found something deeper. A sense of self I'd been searching for my whole life without knowing it. I wasn't running from anything anymore. I was running toward myself, toward the truest version of who I was meant to be. On the 5th anniversary of arriving in Norway, I stood at Grandpa's grave. I'd flown back for the first time in years, brought Christian with me, introduced him to Michael and Jessica and their new different lives. Emma, I get it now. Why you did what you did. Why you sent me away when it looked like you were leaving me out. I knelt and placed flowers on the stone, my fingers tracing his name. Emma, you gave me the greatest gift anyone ever gave me. You gave me permission to be myself, to choose differently, to live authentically, and you trusted that I'd be brave enough to accept it. The wind rustled through the trees, and I could almost hear his voice, almost hear him saying what he'd always said when I visited on those Sunday afternoons. Be brave, sweetheart. Be yourself. That's all anyone can ask. I was brave. I was myself. And I was happy. As Christian and I walked back to the car, my phone buzzed with a message from Lars. Another commission. A collector in Amsterdam wanted 3 pieces. Business was good. Life was good. Jessica appeared beside me, linking her arm through mine. Jessica, you did it. You actually did it. Emma, did what? Jessica, became who you were meant to be. Found your purpose. Built a life worth living. All the things we're supposed to do, but most of us never manage. Emma, you're doing it too now. Your photography. The gallery you're opening. That's brave. Jessica, I learned from watching you. Michael caught up with us, camera in hand. He'd quit his corporate job, was traveling, documenting stories of people who'd made big changes. His own transformation had been slower, but no less real. Michael, can I get a picture? The 3 of us? We posed by Grandpa's stone, arms around each other, smiling real smiles. Not the forced ones from family photos growing up, but genuine expressions of people who'd found their way to authenticity through different paths. That night, back at the hotel, I pulled out Grandma's journal one last time. I'd read it so many times the pages were soft, the ink faded, but the words still resonated. Don't sacrifice yourself, she'd written. Don't abandon your dreams. Be braver than I was. I'd done it. I'd honored her sacrifice by living the life she couldn't, and in doing so, I'd found myself. I added my own entry to the journal, my handwriting next to hers, 2 women separated by generations, but connected by understanding. Dear Grandma, I wrote, I lived your unlived life. I painted your unpainted paintings. I became the woman you never got the chance to be. And I did it because you made it possible. Because Grandpa understood what I needed even when I didn't. Because you both loved me enough to give me what I needed instead of what I thought I wanted. I hope I've made you proud. I hope wherever you are, you can see that your sacrifice wasn't wasted. That your dreams didn't die with you. They just waited a generation to bloom. Thank you for your courage to make hard choices. Thank you for your gift of this house, this life, this possibility. And thank you for being honest in these pages about your struggles and your regrets. That honesty saved me from making the same mistakes. I'm living fully, loving deeply, creating constantly, and I'm doing it all as myself, the truest version of myself I've ever been. I hope that's enough. I think it is. With all my love and gratitude, Emma. I closed the journal and tucked it back in my suitcase. Tomorrow we'd fly back to Norway, back to the village, back to the life I'd built. But tonight, I sat in the silence and felt the weight of family history, of choices made and paths taken, of one woman's sacrifice becoming another woman's salvation. At my grandfather's funeral, my siblings got millions. I got a plane ticket, and I got everything else that mattered. Everything real, everything true. I got myself, and in the end, that was worth more than any inheritance could ever be.